lost my hair if I had to go through all of that. Mary Ellen now is working as an office manager in her husband's law practice. She was last on city council. You left in 2015, correct?
That's good.
So she's had some time away and is here to lend some expertise. Thank you both for coming. So let's start off with the basics. As we said before, we got a new city council and everybody's still kind of feeling their way. A new mayor who has a lot of experience on the city council. And Mary Ellen, around the first of the year, you wrote a letter to the editor, to the paper, that kind of gave some advice to city council members on here's the basics of what you need to know. And it wasn't like teaching school. It was heartfelt and said these are really, listen, talk, deliberate with each other, respect each other. Can you kind of take it a little bit further and talk about what it takes to be a responsive elected official, not just to each other, but to your constituents?
I think the biggest thing in terms of being a city council member is time. It is so hard to find the time to do everything that everybody wants you to do. And so prioritizing is very important. Being honest with your constituents is extremely important because you just can't do it all. And I remember days when there were just 10, 12, 15 phone calls from constituents, and having to deal with that level of communication is just staggering. And having a staff that helps you and backs you up is so important. So I think as people, we need to understand how hard it is to be a city council person and to be very mindful of their time and their energy.
When you related to your fellow council members, some of them maybe didn't have much experience, some of them maybe had a lot of experience. What is that relationship like, and how do you approach that?
I think every issue is a different issue. Sometimes you're on the same side and sometimes you're not. And understand that once an issue is over with, it's over with, and to move on. And I think I said that in that article. It is so important not to hold grudges, not to get personal, to just deal with the issues as you see them and respect that everybody on the council comes from a different place, from different experience, from different education. They have done different things, and to learn from them and understand that their district is not your district and that they are responding to their constituents and you are responding to yours. So it's just being respectful that they are elected to and listen to them.
I'm going to skip over to Clinton in just a second, but I do want to follow up on that and ask you, you represented a district when you were on city council. There are two at-large aldermen, alderwomen. There's also a mayor. How does that dynamic work when you are working for your district, but also thinking about it in terms of the broader picture and working with those three citywide elected officials in terms of your priorities?
The beauty of those two people is that they can focus on wider issues while you are dealing with those day-to-day issues of dealing with people that are upset about drainage, or their trash wasn't picked up, or their potholes in the front of their home. Those people can deal with the broader issues, i.e. deal with poverty, with wider city problems. So there's a benefit to that.
So they can look maybe a little bit more policy while you're looking more at the nuts and bolts.
Exactly.
Clinton, in your board work, and I know that you kind of jumped in with both feet. What was the experience like? You're closer to it than Mary Ellen is. What was the experience like, and what have you learned?
Are we talking about which board?
Working with government boards, working with others toward a common public good.
I would say, I've found it really interesting, especially through the CAP board, because we have 4 members there who are elected officials, and when they come to the table to conduct business around transit, we also have to realize that they're there with a variety of other hats on, as am I, and as is everybody else who's coming to the table. But it's definitely been interesting work, and we definitely have a majority Chatham County commissioners on the CAP board as opposed to city council members. But I think the same thing will apply, is that when the city council person is elected to the CAP board, we'll be working with them not only as somebody who's going to be focusing on transit, but also focusing on a variety of other issues as well. And again, I think it just comes down to communication. As you're going to get a lot of calls, and you're going to have to try to figure out how to how to deal with a tremendous amount of pressure from a variety of different sources, especially people pulling on, wanting you to do different things that are really completely diametrically opposed. Exactly. And how do you come to a decision? How do you come internally, I think, as a person to a decision in order to move that forward? Because I think we always talk a lot about, well, we've got constituents, but especially in the Thomas Square neighborhood and in District 2, you have constituents that are on totally opposing sides. And so how do you reflect that? How do you sort of take that all together and say, all right, well, this is my decision, and this is the decision I'm going to make? And I think that is incredibly tough.
To another point, and Mary Ellen, please speak to this, is we are in the case we have now, we have a new city council that a lot of it you could look at it and say it was a mandate. They were given a mandate. We didn't like the way our old representatives were doing it. We want complete change. So they come in with this mandate. They feel they have their own agenda. How do they go about furthering their own agenda while still building the relationships they're going to need for the next 4 years?
Well, I think first and the major priority that the new city council has is to bring in a new city manager. And I think finding a city manager that shares a lot of what they want to do is going to be vital to going where they want. That, number one, respects Savannah, cares about Savannah, but also knows that they have an agenda that they need to follow. So I think that's really going to be where you're going to see how things play out, is what kind of a city manager that they hire and who they hire. And it's going to be interesting. I talked to Pat Monahan this morning, and he said that there is nobody in-house right now that plans to apply for the job, which means that we will end up with a city manager from someplace else if he's not able to get anybody in-house to apply for it. So that's huge. That is going to be huge.
That has the potential to bring them together.
To bring them together and to start to have a new agenda.
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
too?
Clint.
So the way I heard your question was that the mandate for the new city council is to kind of do what the previous city council had not been doing, and or doing differently, exactly. And I think in District 2, we saw that again. We had two opponents, I'm not going to say opponents, but two candidates that were very different. We had Bill Durrance and Dietrich Leggett. And I'd worked with Bill, basically since he was elected, and was absolutely in favor of having Bill being reelected because he kind of brings a policy wonkiness with him that I wasn't really seeing in a lot of the other candidates, actually except for Nick. And I also working with him at CAT and seeing how deep down into the nuts and bolts he gets. I really felt that we kind of needed that. Talking to people through the election, and especially after the election when Dietrich Leggett won, not by a couple points, but by a lot of points, actually. I didn't do it? All right. Dietrich won by a lot of points, and I was very surprised. But as I started talking to other people about it, is they were missing a person, and they were missing a bit of they were missing some love from city council. And Dietrich came to our first city council meeting, or to our first neighborhood association meeting in December as the alderman-elect. And listening to his tone versus listening to Bill Durrance's tone and the things that they focused on and the things they talked about, Durrance focused all the time on zoning and policy and ones and zeros. And personally, I thought that was really great. But I didn't realize how much we needed Dietrich to come in and kind of say, hey, we're all in this together. And we'll get to the nuts and bolts, but we're all in this together. And I thought that was actually really, right then and there, I was like, cool, Team Dietrich, here we go. So I was very excited.
And Mary Ellen, because this council, a lot of the aldermen that won, they are very in touch with their neighborhoods. They were very active in their neighborhood associations before they ran for office. They have that connection. How big a deal is that when you're sitting on the dais at City Hall to have that kind of connection with your neighborhood and your neighborhood leaders?
I think it's all about listening. And, that's why those neighborhood councils are so important. And going door to door and talking to people is so important. It's all about listening.
Put it down. I apologize. Do we need it? I need it.
Again, I think that's a really important part, and I could imagine that'll be the story of the first year of this council playing out, is that they're way more connected with their neighborhoods and with their constituency than the council previous, and we're moving from what many have said is sort of very developer friendly, very developer friendly to a very neighborhood friendly city council, and I think that's going to have actually really fantastic repercussions, as long as we do not forget how important the nuts and bolts actually are. Is that at the end of the day, warm and fuzzy is great, but we need some policy changes to be made, and I think that's the challenge of this first year: is can we connect the warm and fuzzy to the policy changes, and if so, then very cool. Very cool.
The balance is going to be really important, because the council that was outgoing was very pro-business, very pro-development, really carried Savannah forward in terms of thinking, in terms of economic development, but it got ahead of a lot of the citizens. So I don't know if it needs to be pulled back, but the other council did not seem interested in seeking a balance. This council, let's hope they are in favor of not going the other way and still seeking that balance. How difficult is that, Mary Ellen, to find that balance?
And you're absolutely right, it's a balance. I don't think that any council should be all pro-business or all pro-resident. There is an absolute balance. A perfect example of that is the Airbnb situation. On the one hand, Airbnb is business. On the other hand, the residents in general really don't like it because it comes with a whole lot of problems. And it's not just Savannah. I mean, it's everywhere where cities have had serious problems with Airbnb issue. And so I think it's listening to the residents and saying, hey, yeah, it's great, business, it's more money for taxes and all that. But on the other hand, you've got to, at the end of the day, listen to the people that elected you.
It's quality of life.
It's quality of life.
Right. And you were District 4, which is Ardsley Park, which is an area that the vacation rentals have kind of crept, and we've had some incidents where people in residential neighborhoods were having loud parties and people coming and going and coming in from out of town. And that, again, is about balance, right? Because downtown, much more short-term vacation rental friendly, although some downtown residents will probably disagree with that. But there's a difference between one area of town and another area of town and another area of town, and that's something that City Council is struggling with. And of course, depending on what happens at the state level with short-term vacation rentals, in terms of whether the state is going to step in and take away some local control, which I'm not starting that rumor. That has been talked about. We don't know that it's going to be furthered. We're probably going to hear more on that this week on Savannah Chatham Day, when our city council goes up to talk to the legislators. But yeah, that is a perfect example, and there's a lot of other commercial developments and redevelopments coming down the pike that are really going to test the mettle of finding that balance of quality of life. And Clinton, I want to bring you back in, since we're talking a little bit about quality of life and zoning, is where your business is and where you live here in Starland. There's a big development planned. This area has probably redeveloped faster than most other areas of town. How are we doing on that balance?
So kind of touching back on that idea, is we have a lot of stuff that's already been approved. We have a lot of stuff that's on the docket to be approved, and we have a lot of stuff that is sort of in the inertia of that last 4 years, really since the last recession, that will need to be or could be approved in the future. I mean, there's a lot of possible development coming to Savannah, and I'm talking about commercial and residential both. And so I hope that there's not too much of a blowback from the last 4 years, so that there's a stop on the creation of new spaces for things to happen in. We need more of everything. We need more housing in our core. We need more commercial spaces in our core. We need lots of spaces for this to happen. And so my hope is that we do work on finding a balance, but we don't stop building some of the things that we really, I think drastically need. And that my main concern is for housing in the core, that we do build as much as we possibly can. And I think that's kind of, that kind of again goes to a challenging balance of, people want both affordable housing and their housing values to go up, and those are diametrically opposed as well. So we've got to try to figure out a good balance moving forward, and I think that'll be a challenge, and I think we have elected the right folks to be able to do that. But yeah, the Starland District is just going crazy. I mean, it kind of hit me the other day, sort of like, oh, it's the next big... Nope, it's just happening. We were talking a little bit earlier with the wonderful co-owner of this fine establishment about, my guess is we'll have 10 new businesses opening up on Bull Street alone, in the next year. And they will have to go through a process that touches on all aspects of things that City Council works on, and making sure that that local businesses feel that the city wants them to be here is key. And if we have too much of a pro or of an anti-development attitude, then that I don't find that helpful either.
I want to circle back. Mary Ellen talked a little bit about city manager and the opportunity there, and let's drill down on that a little bit and talk more of what are we looking for. You had some advice for the city council in terms of how they kind of go about their day. If you had advice, because you've been in there, there was at least one, maybe two, that while you were in office were hired. What did you learn from the process? If you could go back and do it again, what would you have said that maybe you didn't say the first time?
I think in terms of the school board, I actually walked right in, just like this one, where they walked right in and had to select a new superintendent. And I think what we learned from that experience was don't pick your third choice. That if things go badly with the first two for whatever reason, if number one doesn't want the job or wants too much money, or the second one, there's another problem and that bows out, then you end up with your third choice. Start over again. Look again. Don't settle for number three. The other thing I guess I learned, and this had more to do with Rochelle Small-Toney, and I did not vote for her, but was that don't settle for a 5-4 vote. That if it's only 5-4, maybe you should look someplace else, because that's not fair to them. It's not fair to you. It just, they need 6 or at least 6, 7, preferably unanimous vote coming in, because it's just a difficult situation when you come in with that kind of a vote. So you really want everybody on board with whoever you select. And again, if it comes to that situation, it's time to start over again.
Is that about the process?
Is
that a matter of the process? Does a process, if you get down the road in the process and you see that everybody's going different directions, do you cut it off then and circle back?
Exactly. Start looking again. It's better to do it, to take your time and do it right, than do it quickly and do it badly. And unfortunately, I mean, this group is under a lot of pressure because Pat Monahan so badly wants to retire, and I keep encouraging him to stay, to give them some time to really find who they need and do it right. But like I said, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, he went from March and now it's out to May. And, who knows where it will end.
He's great. Every meeting I've ever had that Pat has been in, the question immediately after he, ends presenting is, "Are you going to stay?" And then he says no, and it's sad. So we should just clone him.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's kind of interesting. I thank you for saying what you just said, Mary, because we're in the same process at CAT of finding an a CEO, and so no third choice and unanimous vote. Great. And I think that's going to be, and to start again. And I think to have the confidence to start again will be big as well. So that should be fun. Good luck.
And Clint, you experience there, right? I mean, you're on the Visit Savannah board, which has one of the strongest leaders in town, Joe Marinelli, leading that organization.
Jumping on that, and then also is to spend time with Pat. Pat is really, I mean, I remember the first meeting I had with him, and I was like, wow, he's great. Like, it's been a while since I've been in a meeting with somebody of such administrative depth and stature. And I would say spend some time with Pat and get to understand what it's like to have, a world-class, leader, really. in that, and specifically an administrative leader. It's quite impressive. I would say Visit Savannah is a difficult one to compare to because it is very well run. It's a very well run organization, but it's almost so well run that the board doesn't have a lot of say in what happens. It just magic happens, and it is extremely effective at what it is mandated to do.
My thing goes dark as you guys are wrapping up. One other thing I had on my list was relationships with officials of other elected bodies. It's pretty pertinent this week. It was top of mind for me as I was drawing up these questions because they're getting ready to go to Atlanta for Savannah Chatham Day and talk to the state legislators. But City Council works with County Commission, Chatham Area Transit, state legislators, Congressman Buddy Carter's office, the senators' offices. What is the key to those relationships, Mary Ellen? Because I know that it's a limited contact, but when you have the contact, it has to be pretty positive, right?
Okay, so I want to blow all that up. Because I've been around Savannah, I've been here 37 years, and I've seen everybody do everything the same way for 37 years, and in some of the bigger issues that we have to deal with, we flunked. I mean, we failed as a community. Poverty is no different than it was 37 years ago. And we are not, it's hardly changed at all. And that's not acceptable. And every time I join a group, any group, it's always the same. We all come in with our list, and we say, okay, these are our priorities, and then we stick them up on the wall, and then we go and we put our little sticky notes and we decide, okay, these are going to be our top priorities. And I think that's great for the staff. It gives them an instant understanding of where people are coming from. It helps with short-term issues. It doesn't get to the big issues. It really doesn't work. But there are other ways that other communities do deal with bigger issues. One I call the Netherlands way of doing things, where what they do is every year they decide on one town that they feel like seriously needs help. And they focus on that town. They focus tons of resources on that town so that it is no longer considered the bottom of the barrel in terms of towns. And they have a beautiful country. We could do the same thing on a neighborhood level. The problems in this community, so many of them are centered in certain areas of town where your crime is bad, your poverty is bad, your schools are not so good, you have health issues, you have food deserts. If you have transportation issues, okay, instead of trying to attack all that in a wide sort of area, focus on one community and learn how to build that community into something better. And we've never done that. And I think, if we said, okay, we are going to work on this one area, and we are in every single possible way that they have an issue, we are going to make this better. And work on it from that perspective. Maybe we would see some better outcomes in some of the things that we try to do. That's one way of doing it. Can I keep going? Okay. The other way of looking at it is what I call the Charlotte model. And what Charlotte Mecklenburg does, and they have all their, speaking of which, they have their city, county, and school board all in the same building. They share everything, but in a way that we've never even considered doing. But what they do is that their what they call it, their business community, every year or every couple of years decides that there's one issue that they want to tackle as a community. For instance, transit. I think one year they decided they needed better transit. They decided that they needed to bring in a metro system, a light rail system, extremely expensive sort of thing to do. They went all over they found out what communities did transportation the best. They spent a year analyzing that, going and visiting those places that did it well, and took that back and then spent time making it happen in their community, so that the entire community focused on that issue. The entire community said, we are going to fight this issue and we're going to make it work. Well, wouldn't that be great if we did the same thing? That if the Chamber of Commerce or some entity took on one issue as an entire community, not just the city council saying, well, we're going to deal with poverty, but then the school board saying, no, we're going to deal with early childhood education or something. Everybody is too siloed. Everybody is too busy going off in different directions. Nothing lasts for any length of time. We need more coalition in terms of how our community does things. Thank you.
And that's interesting because there is a big push now toward Vision 2033, looking ahead to 300 years, and that's the basis of the Beacon magazine that we do. It's something that City Council has on their docket is some private investment to match with some government investment to identify these issues and to tackle those issues ahead of the next 13 years now, I guess. And Clinton, as somebody who is in the trenches on that side of the bill in terms of transit and thinking of ways to improve the community, what's your take on that?
So City Council was elected. We had a board meeting for CAT not long after, and we came up with this idea to have basically just a very simple get-together communication chat thing at CAT Central and invite all municipal leadership in Chatham County. So every city council member of Pooler, Garden City, Vernonburg, the city of Savannah and the county, and we invited them to come to CAT for some snacks, some conversation, and a very short presentation about CAT. Because we had never done that before. Because the 4 years that everybody else, and minimum 4 years, because many other people had probably been on city council for long before then, without ever having been invited to CAT to hear an explanation of what Chatham Area Transit actually does. What I realized we had maybe 12, 15 people show up from all the different municipalities, elected leadership, and they got a presentation, and they got to meet all of our executive staff and our interim CEO and the board members at CAT and hear a little bit about how CAT works, And I think, so now they know. They don't know the whole thing, but they've got an idea of okay, well, this is a complicated system, like the school board, like the county, like the homeless authority, like the housing authority. These are all extremely complicated systems, and I think we've got to have an understanding, of respecting the complexity of each of these different systems, but then also knowing each other in order to help the end user, which is, again, just the citizens of Savannah. The average person doesn't really know, and the average person doesn't really know that there's all this different division between how decisions are made. And so I think we owe it to them to make it less divisive between, leadership up at the top. And I was extremely, extremely excited to see people learning at that meeting, and to see, now our CFO Terry knows all the city council members. I don't think that's ever happened before, and that's really cool. And we're going to keep on doing stuff like this. And so I think, yes, we've got to be working on sort of coalition building, but also I think it behooves everybody to kind of say, hey, you know what? Maybe everybody doesn't know how my thing works. And so I'm going to take some time to figure out a nice little way to think about it and to explain it, and then I'm going to explain it, And I don't really know how the school board works. But if there was a little meeting that I could go to and they were like, all right, it's hard. Cool. All right, great. And so I think that would be helpful. And I was very encouraged at that meeting, specifically watching the newly elected city council members of Savannah meet the newly elected city council members of Pooler. And that was magical, and they're all like, yes, 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 yes. It was very...
Are they looking for synergies?
The synergies will come later. I mean, they were looking for names and handshakes and and faces, and that's what we were able to provide, and it was very cool, because I think now they know each other, and it's within the first month of them being elected, they've met some folks from Pooler. They know how CAT works. Good. We'll start with that.
So the last question for the panel, and it's an involved question, so we'll make it the last question. We're gonna talk about this, and then we're gonna take a a little break and bring in Jocelyn from White Whale, and then we're going to have some questions from the audience. But one of the things that the City Council is going to talk to the state legislature this week is changes to the structure of City Council, and specifically term limits, specifically staggering the terms. So if you have 8 City Council members, we elected 4 in 2019, we'll elect 4 in 2021, and then 4 in 2023, so that there's some continuity. You have some crossover. You're not electing a whole new government every 4 years. And then the other thing, which Clinton has written about in the newspaper before, is paying our aldermen as full-time positions. So let's start at the top. Term limits. And right now, the only term-limited position in our city government is the mayor. What are your thoughts and feelings on term limits, Mary Ellen?
I go back to the people. I feel like it's up to the people to decide on term limits. And so, truly, I'm opposed to them. I think as long as somebody's doing a good job and they have that institutional history, it's fine. If the people no longer or want a different direction or want somebody different, they'll get rid of them. We had Mayor Osakis for years and years and years, and at one point the people finally said, we want somebody different. And I respect that. And so, as far as I'm concerned with term limits, I'm opposed to them.
Clinton, do you want to take that one before we go to staggered terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think, just let people decide.
Staggered terms is something you've had it both ways, right? On the school board, there was staggered terms. On city council, it was all 8 or 9 every 4 years. What's your...
The city council model. I found that you're in it together, and so you're more likely, or you should try and get along. It gives you more of an opportunity to know each other and where they're coming from. I found on the school board it was very unsettling. Every 2 years you kind of started over with new people that you had to kind of bring on board. And that was constant in and out, in and out, in and out. Now, it has settled. I mean, we've had some people on the school board that have been there a long, long time, which is a good thing, but that doesn't always happen. And at the time that I was on, there was an awful lot of turnover. And like I said, it was unsettling. I like the teamwork thing. Edna Jackson was wonderful at unifying the city council and working hard to make everybody happy. And I think if you have a mayor that is really strong about that, about trying to make everybody work, and that the city council members are trying really hard to get along, that you can have a very good working relationship with each other, and very civil relationship with each other. And I think that that's why I'm for having it. We're all in it together, and we're going to make it happen.
So the argument on that, of course, is if you do staggered, then you're not throwing out an agenda every 4 years, right? You have a little bit of continuity in agenda. A new group comes in, maybe that agenda it evolves a little bit, but still the priorities stay. No.
Sometimes it's a whole nother 4 or 5 new people. I mean, that's really, you're basically starting all over every 2 years. I mean, you could be.
It could be.
You could be.
Yeah, so you're starting over 4 years or starting over 2 years, one way or the other.
And it's also unsettling for the staff because they don't know what it's a brand new group every time, and so it's how do we deal with these people?
Right.
I think so. Let's say that city council got elected in the even years. Then who gets elected on the presidential years? And so I think there's just some really practical, questions to ask, like who else is on the ballot? If this is a presidential ballot and districts 1, 2, 3, 4 are voted in during, the president's election, but then the other alderman districts are not, then you're going to get some really skewed votes. You're going to have like 20,000 people voting for some and like 2,000. So I'm totally in agreement with Mary. No.
So let's talk about pay. So Clinton's on the record. I'll let you start with Clinton and make your case.
I don't think you need to defend yourself. This is just like, honestly, I think just one of the most, this has really just happened. It's okay, so basically, my arguments would be aldermen of the city of Savannah. It is important for us as constituents that they receive full-time pay so that they can have their job as a full-time job. Their full-time job should be to be the alderman of their district. They should have no other requirement for working. It should be able to pay for everything that they need to do. There should be no, sort of desire to be kind of like at the end of the month with extra bills, struggling to figure out how you're going to pay for them. Because as soon as that comes up, now you've got to spend time doing stuff that isn't serving me as a constituent to get that money. And at worst, stuff might get really kind of weird and smelly, and you could start getting into the whole corruption argument as well. But I just think it's a full-time job. Treat it as a full-time job and pay it as a full-time job. I think the returns for the city and for all of us as residents will grossly outweigh the very small amount that it would take from our budget to accomplish it. I see it as really just like one of the simplest, easiest ways of having far more engagement from a far wider audience of people who actually might consider running. How much do you get paid, Nick? So $25,000. Probably after all the donations you got to make to the bicycle campaign and the homeless authority and all this other stuff and going to these things and paying for your own gas and doing, I don't know about all the, expenses that are covered as well. But, it should really, I don't want money to be on your mind. I want my money to be on your mind. I don't want your money to be on your mind. So that's my argument.
Answer. How many hours a week are you working as a councilman, in your experience?
I don't even remember. I didn't keep count, but a lot of Saturdays and Sundays.
So you think it's a full-time job?
It is and it isn't. When I first was on the school board, I got paid $3,000 a year. It was very much as full-time as a city council person was. It did not even, good. It didn't even cover my babysitting costs. It was a labor of love. However, I do understand that, and on city council, it was $10,000, went up right after I got off. So I've never gotten paid more than that. And I would thought, boy, 10,000 I was really pleased. Wow, I'm going places. I think the problem with having full-time city council members is that you need to absolutely instill the city charter. If we're not going to change the city charter, then they have to understand that their role is completely and totally client, not even client, I'm back at work. It's constituent work. That you are not to be running the city, that is the city manager's job, that you are not to be at City Hall every day telling the staff what to do. It has to be all about that you are meeting with your constituents and you are working on policy issues or researching policy issues. You are not to be running city government. And I have seen city council members that have tried very hard to run city government, and it causes all kinds of problems. The poor city staff cannot have 9 bosses. They really cannot. It's not fair to them. So I think, yes, I understand that it can be a full-time job. I think it has to be made very clear what their jobs are and are not. And I remember today I was at Jimmy Blackburn's funeral, and they talked about, Edna talked about how important it was for city council members to read and understand the city charter, and how Jimmy was adamant that they all understand the city charter, and when you went away from the city charter, Jimmy would let you know.
Yeah, that's it.
Can I? All right. So,
piece of trepidation that I have.
Oh, all right.
The whole idea of, you go full time. Does that basically give you license to run the government?
So one, I don't know if people heard, but what did you say, Nick? It was 23. $25,000 a year is what city council is paid. He said it off the mic, so I don't know if people heard. But I think that's a really good point. And so I think, maybe this is more, I don't want to get down in the, language and semantics, but considering it not as a job, but as a listening post. It's like, I'm paying you to have the time to listen to me, and for you to really have no other reasons to not listen to me as a constituent, so that you do, and then I don't feel like I'm taking up your time. I feel like this is my time. As a constituent, you are here to listen to me. And I think that is I cannot stress enough how much I am not encouraging, this to turn into a job where the aldermen are running the city, they're leading the city, they're listening to the city, because I've seen similar problems to that at CAT. The city is run by the city manager. City council is there to listen to us so they can figure out what direction to move it into, and so I think we can do both, but I think you would also see. I just don't really see a good reason not to give it the commensurate monetary amount that it needs.
Else, I got you.
Already should have.
Discussion. I really appreciate Mary Ellen Sprague and Clinton Edminster sitting in with me today, and we are going to let them step away. We're going to bring in Jocelyn for a minute to talk about White Whale, and then we're going to take your questions from the audience. So if you all have something you would like to ask me or the panelists, because they will come back, please scribble it down on your piece of paper, or if you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, go ahead and send them in through the system there. So thanks, guys. We'll bring you back in just a minute. Piccolo, I said that correctly. Excellent. Glad it's late in the day. I'm just trying to be on point. But you are the proprietor of here at White Whale Craft Ales, which, as I said earlier, is a tavern on Bull Street just south of Forsyth Park. You opened up in 2016. Before we started everything, we talked a little bit about your vision. Can you talk about your vision in 2016 and what it's evolved to now?
2016, we opened as a bottle shop, and I wouldn't call us a tavern. I would call us a tasting room. So we were strictly bottles to go package for consumption off premise, and we did growlers as well. So we already had our tap system in place, and it was just a matter of convincing City Council to allow us to be able to serve pints. That was always our ultimate goal. We now have that luxury, and we're currently in a probationary period for doing to-go cups. I'm interested to see how that works out because the space that they're allowing that is so restricted, and it's hard for business owners to kind of keep a watchful eye other than telling people you're only allowed to go here, here, here.
How far does it extend?
So it goes to Henry Street, that
Okay, so
red light, and
half a
then
block.
you can go down Bull Street to Forsyth, but you have to stay between Drayton and Whitaker, and you can't go into the park.
Okay.
So it's just a T, basically.
So it's you guys in American Legion.
And Lashai,
Yeah.
and I don't know if Sentient serves, but I would imagine
think they serve
they're in it
as
as well. Yeah, I feel kind of bad for our friends over at Black Rabbit. They were huge proponents in helping us get this to this stage, and they're not included in that corridor. It's unfortunate,
Maybe
but
if you guys find success, the corridor.
yeah, I'm hoping that it works out. I'm really hoping that it works out. And there's so much change coming to Forsyth with new restaurants coming our way. And so I'm excited to see what the future of that holds.
You're also on the front end, or at least the leading end of craft beer. It's really taken off. And of course
Yeah.
We have several craft breweries here in town.
Right.
Talk about the timing there and what you strive for when you try to put together your beer list.
So our goal is to carry local beers from around the world. We keep our focus community-centric. We don't carry a ton of our own community's beers, mainly because you can go to Kroger and Publix and we cannot compete with their pricing. But we are happy to refer visitors to Kroger or Publix to buy their beers, or the breweries themselves, because they're able to sell on premise. But yeah, so our focus is mainly on beers that we've experienced in our travels, things that are new and exciting that are starting to distribute to Savannah. We really keep a focus on home runs, some of those old school craft beer brewers, and everyone else that's just popping up. So we try to really focus our list, though, and our draft list is constantly evolving.
And I'm maybe speaking out of turn, but will we see some brewery equipment somewhere around here eventually?
Maybe not in this space, but perhaps in a nearby venue. We really have to look at the Georgia Code as far as that's concerned and see what kind of opportunity we could come up with that. But we do have a lot of regulars that are home brewers, and we're a huge proponent of the home brewing community here in Savannah. So we're excited to see where that takes us.
Okay, last thing, tell us hours, everything they need to know if they want to come down here and have some beer.
So we're open Tuesday through Thursday from 12 to 8 p.m. 8 p.m.? 9 p.m. And then Friday and Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. We're starting a new event on Mondays. It's actually kicking off the first Monday in February. It's going to be a comedy championship. And we're teaming up with one of the breweries out of Atlanta to kind of come up with a WCW style belt. My husband used to work for wrestling, so we're
Mike with a championship belt.
yes, and the comedians that we're hosting are going to be curated, but it's going to be kind of a comedy showdown with 3 different comedians every week. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, sounds like fun. Well, Jocelyn, thank you for hosting us.
Yeah,
and thank you for
absolutely.
taking a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about your business.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We have 4 questions. I told everybody, I said, make sure you write it legibly, which if they actually saw my handwriting, they would think that that's really, really funny, because mine's illegible, so I think I can probably manage this. So the first question is, regarding businesses coming into the Starling community, is the community requiring them to become partners? Do they need to support community projects, attend meetings, etc.? And if you don't know the answer, should they? Do you see that as part of, I guess, as part of being a good steward of your community, right?
Well, they should, but we can't make them. And there's a variety of different, at least what I've seen over the last, like 6 years, is some businesses are really involved and others are not. Some businesses you want them really involved, and others maybe you don't. I mean, I would hope that they do, but we have no trigger, we have no mechanism to enforce that. Especially, I mean, with an alcohol license or anybody selling alcohol, you do need, there's a public process to that, and so you could kind of definitely encourage, engagement. But for everything else, I mean, it's basically at this point a silent process, and I'm okay with that. I think if you don't have an organization that they want to be a part of, then you might want to work on your organization, as opposed to making sure that they're part of it.
Starlandia Supply, of course, is partner all the way.
God, yes. But yeah, no, I think we strive to be a great partner, and I'm proud to say that a majority of the businesses in the Starling District are awesome. Like, they are great people. They're good friends. Staff are great friends. Their staff are great friends with each other. The amount of the amount of competition, it's really not there at all. It definitely seems like we're all unified in making it an amazing place, not only for our businesses but the residents around us.
It's good to have that. So here's a really good one for Mary Ellen, and it says, isn't it time that a reassessment took place regarding the structure of city government? All cities and small towns don't have city managers running things. Now, of course, this kind of dovetails on something that was kicked around last week, that maybe we change our charter to give the mayor a little bit more power. I think that the suggestion was limited power, but there's also people that say, why don't we go to a mayor-council form of government versus a city manager form of government? Where do you come down on structures of government?
I like what we have, to be honest with you. I think that I've seen plenty of other places have it differently, where where you do have more involvement in terms of the mayor and the council. I think it's better the way we have it. I mean, there's more problems that I've seen. For instance, Macon had some huge problems. Augusta's had huge problems with their city councils and that form of government. This puts I think you have less problems. I forgot what you call it.
Takes the politics out of it, right?
It takes yes, and I think there's less
Certain extent.
chance for bad things happening, I guess is the best way to describe it. The reason why we ended up with the charter we did was because there was too much corruption,
Right.
frankly, and I think, you're opening it back up for that if you change our form of government.
Yeah, because officials are running things that their first priority a lot of times is to get reelected, and therein becomes a problem. Clinton, any thoughts on that one?
I believe that was Gordon Matthews that wrote some sort of letter to somebody, and then it got spread everywhere all over the time. But if you actually read what he was saying is I don't think he was advocating for complete change over to the manager or to a city run by the city council, but he was definitely interested in giving the mayor and thereby the city council more of a say on how the budget was presented and how the city manager is working. And I think if we could, I think like some of that to me, and I could totally use the lesson on how this actually works, but some of that to me seemed a little bit more about pomp and circumstance as opposed to, what does it actually mean to present an agenda? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe that's a big deal. It doesn't seem like
Can I
one.
speak
Is
to
it?
that?
Please.
Because I'm a big budget and numbers wonk. You get what you ask for. And I remember when I first got on city council, they presented us with the budget, and it was budget to budget. There were no actual figures at all. I had no idea how much the city was actually spending on anything because there were no actual numbers. And I think, I demanded we get actual figures, that we actually know what was spent last year. And I think that it's just, and I got it, but boy, it was like pulling teeth because the city administration didn't really want to release that. And I think that that's important, that you get what you ask for. And I think that if you want that information, you demand it. And so the way it's presented is up to the city council. And they need to say, I don't understand this, and I don't like the way it was presented. Let's rethink this.
I like that idea, though, that the budget the council to the city manager to work with this, and again, this stuff is like, it's not like they're working in a vacuum. It is very much, I would imagine, a collaboration between two parties. But I definitely think buffing up the powers that city council has, I'm okay with that. But again, their job is not to run the city. I do like the city manager run city. I think it does make sense, especially if we're not doing anything with how people are elected. So I'm down.
What parts of public service were the most encouraging, and which ones were the most disturbing? You both are in that position, but let's start with you. What parts of public service were the most encouraging versus the most disturbing? Mary Ellen, why don't you go first?
I'll pass that off to Clinton.
Okay, well, so I can only really say that from the time I've had at CAT, which has been about 1.5 years, and the time at the Neighborhood Association for Thomas Square, which we saw some really crazy stuff go down. And is how to take it not personally. Okay, is how to take things not personally while also realizing that the decisions that you're making are reaching into people's lives and changing them, and to understand that you have the responsibility of realizing that, but that doesn't mean that you can't not make that decision. Nobody else is there to make it.
So is that encouraging?
That was encouraging, I don't know. But at the same time, I've seen some really wonderful times of people coming together. And the learning that I think takes place has been definitely, from my perspective, definitely one of the most encouraging things I've ever seen is just a group of people learning about how their government works, and then kind of having this is much bigger than me. This whole process is bigger than me, and that has been a very encouraging feeling for me personally, is watching people learn how their government works.
I'm ready. Yes. Okay, so the most encouraging thing by far is the citizen involvement in Savannah. I think it just makes such a huge difference. People don't understand, it really does make a difference if you show up at a city council meeting and you say something, or you show up at the school board and do it. I was talking earlier with Tom Kohler about an event that happened 25 years ago where he basically saved Charles, he and a group, as he told me, saved Charles Ellis School. You learn, so I learned at the time as a school board member from him, and he wasn't the elected person I was, but he was so much more knowledgeable about what could and could not happen, and his involvement made a huge difference. And I think that's people don't understand that they really can make a difference, that you don't have to be an elected official to really affect change in this community, and that involvement, that, you know, city council members, mayor, they don't know everything that goes on in the community. They don't have all the answers. Ideas are wonderful. I mean, some of the best ideas I've ever heard did not come from elected officials. So don't feel like you don't have a voice. That voice is important. Speak up. Bring forth the ideas. I think that's really important. The most discouraging thing, I guess, is the fact that we have, and I mentioned this earlier, that we have problems here in Savannah, long-term systemic problems that we have not yet solved. And I think that's probably the most discouraging thing, is that we've been working on these problems for so long and we're not there yet.
Something that Mary said that I thought was really nice. You don't have to be an elected official to affect change.
That's great.
Yeah. And that kind of dovetails on this last question, which I'm sure you're going to take that 10-foot pole and push it away. Mary Ellen. And it's, in your opinion, who are the most powerful lobbying forces in influencing city council's time and decision making?
You know, it should always be your constituents.
Right.
It really should always be constituents. Yeah, he's laughing because that's not always true, but really and truly it should be. And if it's not, then you're not thinking right. And I will say it's tough sometimes, because sometimes you have what I call the loud minority. Sometimes there are groups that are very loud and vocal, but they don't really represent the silent majority. And so it's important as a city council member to go out and talk to as many people as you can. When there's an issue that has your district divided, particularly, I mean, listen, reach out to people. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone. And I had people like that within my district that I would pick up the phone and say, you know, I'm having trouble with this. What do you think about this? And I think it should always be about that. And some of the lobbyists are extremely effective, and sometimes lobbyists are a good thing. I think one of the tough issues when I was on city council was the issue of the whole smoking in bars. It was huge, and it was very divisive, and people had very strong opinions one way or the other about that. And I reached out and did research, and lots of research. Is secondhand smoking bad for you? Is it not? I mean, it was a long time to make that decision, and I finally voted to eliminate smoking in public places, and I still stand by that vote. But like I said, I think it's important.
And I think it's that constituents can be the Chamber of Commerce. They can be Gulfstream. They can be these powerful lobbying forces. But those are still businesses and business people in your community that band together, and I think sometimes they get a bad rap. And I think it's important to know that, yes, those folks are important in your community too. Again, it's about balance. Right. Clinton?
Balance. I think it's great. I mean, I don't have much more to add.
Okay, so I want to say something. Kind of bashed the business community quite a lot, and the business community has, the last 4 years, been very active, and there has not been, I think, the balance, and I think that's one of the reasons why we saw the big turnover in the election. But the business, I'm part of the business community. I got a business degree. I think that you know, I can't tell you that business is not important. We need jobs, we need money, and I wrote, and somebody actually called me and fussed about that I wrote in that letter at the very end of the day, the importance of growth in Savannah, that if a city is not growing, it's dying. Because businesses, and we were talking about new businesses, and you were talking about Starlandia and new businesses coming in and should they be involved. But you know, the reality is that most businesses fail within the first 3 years. They don't have necessarily have time to be active in the community right off the bat. It is hard to run a business. It is a day-to-day struggle to make payroll, to go forward, and we need to respect how difficult that can be. And I don't know that people always understand that. It's not always about big businesses. It's sometimes just about neighborhood businesses.
To add on that, I think when people say business, the businesses I think about are Big Bon Bodega and Foxy Loxy and Trix Barbecue and my store, and and so when people start attacking businesses, I'm like, wait, those people are awesome people. They work hard every day. They employ my friends. They make things happen. They donate to causes. They sweep the sidewalk, and they put on a smile every day. And everybody is in business. Nobody is not in business, hopefully. And I think that's something we got to realize, is that business is a part of the community. And if anything, the Starland District, and what I love about it so much, is that the businesses and the residents see each other as core parts of that community. And let's keep going with that.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Let me do some housekeeping, and we'll break up here. And the housekeeping starts with promoting ourselves. We're gonna do a little bit of that, and that's that. We love doing these public forums, but that's not all that we are. We are a newspaper. We are a website. We have digital subscriptions to our website, which, if you subscribe, it's free for the first month. It's $7.99 a month after that. That's less than, I haven't gotten the bill yet, but probably 2 of these. And so it's a pretty good deal. And if you go to savannahnow.com/digital only offer, that's special code, savannahnow.com/digital only offer, you can take advantage of that. Also want to promote our podcasts. We do a number of podcasts. I do 2 in particular. The Commute with That Savannah Opinion, which if you got your phone, you can go into your podcast app and search for The Commute with That Savannah Opinion, or Savannah's Difference Makers, and subscribe to those. They're free. They don't cost you anything. Speaking of free, we have newsletters. I do one daily on the opinion side. We also have daily rundowns of local news and entertainment. Those are free. All you got to do is sign up at savannahnow.com/newsletters. savannahnow.com/newsletters. That's enough of my plug. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mary Ellen. Thank you, Clinton. Thank you, Jocelyn. And thanks, everybody, for coming and listening.